What is up, YouTube? My name is Trinity, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. I am so happy to be back after such a long break. It is a break I really needed, and I intended to come back sooner, but as you can probably hear, I am still getting over a cold or the flu, or I don't know what it is, but I have been down for the count for the last 2 weeks, which is really frustrating because my birthday was a couple of days ago. I still got to celebrate and have a party, but I was not feeling the best. But I am finally back, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about a really cool legend that I've been wanting to cover for a long time, the Beast of Bray Road. Now, there are two reasons that I really wanted to cover the Beast of Bray Road. The first being that some of my favorite videos on this channel are covering similar legends and creatures, such as the Palmyra werewolves and the Michigan Dogman. And the second reason I wanted to cover it is because my new favorite book series that I've been reading, called Monster Hunter Mysteries by Annalise Ryan, is getting a new installment at the end of the month, all about the Beast of Bray Road and the main character trying to figure out if it's real or not. So I really wanted to look into it more, so I understood more about some of the references that are probably going to be in the book. If you haven't read it before, if you haven't heard of it, I really recommend that you read it. It's a very cozy series, even though it's still about monster hunting. So when I first began my research into the Beast of Bray Road, I initially thought that it was going to be one of those cryptids that got really famous off of one or two initial sightings, and then maybe there were some lesser known sightings throughout the years. But no, there is a lot of different sightings of this creature throughout the years, a lot in the 80s and 90s, which is why this creature is heavily associated with satanic rituals and the satanic panic, because that's also when it was going on. There were some animal mutilations happening in the area of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and the surrounding areas, which is where this legend originates, so that all makes sense. Many cryptozoologists that have spoken about this creature often theorize that rather than being a werewolf or dogman or whatever, say that it's more likely a weirdly aggressive Sasquatch or population of Sasquatches from that area, just because a lot of the traits that are associated with the Michigan Dogman, minus the overtly canine stuff, can be attributed to common Bigfoot traits. So the earliest sighting I could find was from 1936 at a Catholic convent called St. Coletta's. This is a secondhand account from a man named Joe Shackleman telling the story of his father, Mark Shackleman, who was kind of a groundskeeper at St. Coletta's. So on one of his nightly patrols, Mark Shackleman was just, doing his thing when he saw a creature that he couldn't identify digging into an indigenous burial mound on the grounds. Though he couldn't see the creature very well, he did think that it probably was kind of big, though crouching down he couldn't say exactly how big, but he saw that it was covered in dark hair. The creature seemed to notice Mark's presence and immediately ran off into the woods. The following day, Mark returned to this area to see if there was any clues that he could ascertain as to what this creature was. In broad daylight, probably wasn't at risk of running into whatever it was, but looked for footprints and stuff. He didn't find footprints, but he did find 3-fingered claw marks in the side of the burial mound, exactly where the creature was. The following night, he came across the burial mound again as he was going on his rounds, and the creature was there again. But instead of retreating as soon as Mark came near it, it actually calmly stood up, and he saw that this creature was well over 6 feet tall, and he also noticed that there was a stench like rotting meat that clung to its fur. It made a noise almost like it was trying to say a word, but its voice was kind of between the growl of an animal as well as a human's voice. He said it was very eerie. It wasn't a fun sound to hear. The word, or at least sound, that he described was something that sounded like ga-dara, or I imagine much more garbled and animalistic than that, but that's what he said that it kind of sounded like. And then it calmly just turned around and walked back into the woods. And then on screen, I will put up a picture that Joe drew based on what his father saw of the creature. And I'm really interested in when this picture was drawn, because if it predates the overall hype that the Beast of Bray Road began to get in the 80s and 90s, it could indicate that this is truly what his father allegedly saw. If it came after, maybe the drawing itself was influenced by the canine-like features that other people were reporting with their own sightings. The next sighting I found was from 1972 by a man named David Jetson. He was an agent from the Department of Natural Resources, and he was responding to a call from an unidentified woman who claimed that she saw a large ape-like creature walking through her farmland. He went there to check it out, but obviously didn't really find anything. About 2 weeks later, David received another call from the same woman, and she said this time that the creature had come up onto her porch and left scratches 7 feet up on the side of her house, and then went into her stable and left a 30-inch gash on the neck of one of her horses. So I assume, if again any of this is true, that whatever creature was in there was maybe startled by the horses, maybe trying to kill it. I didn't see anything that said the horse died, so maybe it was a more shallow scratch, but 30 inches, that's got to be a really big creature, and also depending on the size and age of the horse, like, it would be kind of hard for other natural predators to reach up and make a clean gash like that. The creature was next reported in the fall of 1989 on Bray Road, so I assume this is probably where the Beast of Bray Road gets its name, when a woman named Lori was driving home around 1:30 in the morning. As she was driving in the dark, she noticed a hunched figure on the side of the road. Now, at first, it was facing away from her, but she did note that she saw pointed ears and that whatever it was covered in fur. As she got closer and eventually past it, she realized that as the light from her headlights hit its eyes, that it had an eye shine, and getting closer, she estimated that it was probably, when standing, about 5 feet tall, maybe 150 pounds, not much different than an average human. She also saw that in its clawed hands, it had some sort of meat, likely some roadkill it had found. On screen now, I will put a sketch that was made from what Lori saw. This next story was from December of 1990, so a little over a year later. A girl named Heather, a friend of hers named Russell, they were out with some kids sledding, and they noticed a creature, which they just thought was an average dog, watching them from the edge of a cornfield. They said it had a head like a coyote, but it was covered in silver fur and had brown or darker colored spots all over it. To their shock, it stood up easily on its hind legs, and not wanting to really entice it to chase them, they all started backing away, not wanting to turn their backs on it, but it did begin to chase them. It chased them into whatever the nearest neighborhood was where the rest of them lived. It stopped in about the middle of the neighborhood and then retreated back into the cornfield. Heather's mother, Karen, can also attest that she remembers Heather coming home and telling her all of this that happened and how terrified that she was. This next encounter is from Halloween of 1991. A woman named Doris was driving down Sittler Road, which has now been renamed to Hospital Road. She said that it was a very smoggy day, so she couldn't see too well, visibility wasn't great, and she felt her car go over something. She slowed down and stopped her car about 50 feet away from whatever she had hit, and she got out to inspect her car, thinking that if she hit something, like the animal might have gotten caught up and tangled underneath the car, though it looked like everything was okay, but she kept examining, going around to the trunk. That is when, from behind her, she saw a large, fur-covered creature running at her full tilt. The creature was bipedal, but she couldn't remember a lot of specific details just out of the fear and shock, but she said one thing that she did remember was the way, with a lot of effort, the creature's chest was heaving, like it had been running for a long time, or maybe it had just been hit by a car and it was injured maybe. She also remembered the impact of the footfalls as she saw this creature getting closer to her, so it was a very large creature, whatever it was. She was able to get back in her car and speed out of there before the creature caught up to her. This is not the first time Doris alleges to have seen the beast, however. She also said that when she picked up a friend from a party one day, that her friend pointed out a strange-looking large creature on the side of the road. And then Doris, immediately thinking back to her first encounter with the creature, didn't even stop to look at it, knowing what her friend was probably seeing, and peeled out of there. And then later in the day, when she got out of her car to just look at it, she found what she thinks are claw marks down the side of her vehicle. This next sighting is from a year later, around August, when two friends from Illinois named Chris and Tom were visiting the state for a wedding. Tom was giving Chris a ride to Jellystone Campground where he had been staying. While they were driving, it was very foggy and they felt the impact of the car hitting something, and they assumed that they maybe hit somebody's mailbox. So they stopped the car. They didn't get out, but they were looking around seeing if they could see the mailbox or anything, but didn't find anything. That is when Chris noticed a pungent smell coming through the open window on his side. He said that it was comparable to the smell of a skunk. That is when Tom saw that behind them was a very large hairy creature with silver fur and gray or dark spots on it. The thing reached out its arm and scratched the car, but luckily wasn't able to gain any purchase because Tom booked it out of there, obviously not wanting to see what would happen if they stuck around. Now, as far as physical evidence for the Beast of Bray Road goes, there isn't a ton. However, there is alleged evidence of phenomena associated with the creature. There was a high school teacher. I didn't find the name or anything. He kept finding mutilated animals around his property, so one day he decided to take a roadkill deer that he found and set it up in front of a trail cam and just observe it over the next couple of days to see maybe what was doing this to local animals. For days and days, he said that the only strange thing he really saw around the deer were floating lights, and they would show up day after day, and then one day he checked and the deer carcass was completely gone. He scrubbed through the footage, and in the frames right before the deer was completely gone, he said that there was a strange mist that obscured the lens, and then when it dissipated, that the deer was gone. He allegedly also found some footprints, and yes, I know I bring up that I was a zoology student. I don't know if anything's wrong with these tracks. They look like normal canine tracks to me, so sue me, I guess. There are also pictures of this trackway in the snow, and just from looking at it, it looks a bit narrow for a creature to be bipedally walking, but again, that's just my cursory glance. I don't know too much about what these trackways would look like if this creature is real. There is another piece of evidence that originated in January of 2020, and I shouldn't have to tell you what is wrong with this picture. It's obviously fake. It looks like a poorly taxidermied wolf. There's rod looking things in the arms and stuff. There's no motion blur to indicate that it's moving. It is very obviously a hoax. Even though this piece of evidence is clearly fake, 2020 was the last year that I could find a decently well-known sighting of the creature. In May of that year, a man named Ron Rice was delivering fertilizer to a farm near Lake Geneva off of Highway 36. After completing the delivery, he said he just sat in his truck for a minute trying to figure out what to do next, when he looked over and about 150 feet away from him, he saw a large bipedal creature covered in dark hair, just standing and watching him from the edge of the woodline. He and the creature just observed each other for a little while before it bent, picked something up, and then went back into the forest. Now, again, he doesn't give a lot of details. He doesn't name any overtly canine characteristics, so this does sound a lot like your typical Bigfoot sighting, especially with it reaching down to grab something. I don't know what to make of this legend. I would say if we're going purely on biology and it's an undiscovered animal, I would put my money more towards Bigfoot than a dog-human hybrid type of thing, just because evolutionarily Bigfoot is more likely, in my opinion, than that. There does seem to be some sort of pattern of whatever this thing is being especially active in the fall and winter months, so I don't know necessarily what that means. There's a lot to speculate on, but without a lot of physical evidence, I would put my money more on, if it is something unknown they're seeing, probably Bigfoot or Bigfoot-like. Though, as you can see from the one picture I showed you, this is not something that people are above making hoaxes of. But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think that the Beast of Bray Road is real? Do you think that they are just Sasquatch encounters that people are misconstruing because of built-up misconceptions around the legend itself? Or do you think that it's something else? Is some local just putting on a werewolf mask and going around scaring people every fall? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and click that bell button so you're notified anytime I upload. And if you've had any paranormal, spooky experiences of your own and you want to share that with me and me to potentially read it out on my channel one of these days, be sure to email me at Spooky Chick Stories. I'll have it on the screen here. And just let me know if that's something you're interested in me doing. I am also looking into a couple other things to add on to my channel, maybe doing a giveaway. I have a lot of Cricut projects like stickers and hoodies and other stuff that I've been doing in my spare time. So I would love to kind of fold that into my whole channel and everything to thank you guys for all of your love and support. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.